Hi, what you're looking at here is a subwoofer unit off of a 2004 Range Rover HSE 4.4 liter. This is the Logic 7 subwoofer. So it is two 6-inch drivers. The cones are about 6-inch, and the entire mounting diameter of the drivers is just under 6.5 inches. But these are the two original factory units. They're a dual voice coil. Each voice coil on each unit is 4 ohms. So you have actually you have 4 voice coils total. And they are run internally. All the voice coils are connected, and they all run out to this connector right here, which attaches to the factory wiring harness. Another part of the Logic 7 system is this amplifier that sits it's attached to the subwoofer assembly. It is not necessarily the subwoofer amp, but rather the amplifier for the front channels. It ties into the entire system, so if you were to disconnect this, you wouldn't have any audio on your front left and right channels. So it ties into the entire system. Some people sort of misidentify this as being just the subwoofer amp, but it's more than that. And it bolts into the side of the sub with four Torx bolts right there. But this is the orientation that it would be on the car. So if you were facing the back of the car, on the driver's side, this is directly in front of where the radio units are mounted. So the radio units would be mounted generally in this vicinity, and then to the immediate right of that, towards the front of the vehicle, you have this subwoofer. And there's a panel in front of it. You have to remove that panel with a couple of bolts, and then you can get to these drivers. Now, if you can, if you're taking a look at what's missing here, the entire surrounds have just deteriorated away over the years, and I've actually never seen surrounds this bad. They're just completely gone. You can see that the cones are just sort of wobbling. They're not stabilized by anything on their perimeter. They're just held in by the voice coil itself, and I just can't imagine how bad that driver would sound like that. It wouldn't be able to provide any bass, because this is a sealed enclosure, it's not ported. It wouldn't be able to provide any compression with these surrounds gone. So what we're going to do today is we're going to pop these drivers out of here, and we actually did some measurements, and we found a very inexpensive option that you can pick up off Amazon, wherever. It's made by Pyle Company, and these are 6-inch drivers. They're dual voice coil, and each voice coil is 4 ohm. So from a measurements perspective, from at least the nominal impedance, these match the original from the factory. Where it differs a little bit is probably in its sensitivity and its maybe its power handling. I don't know. I mean, I can guarantee you that these do not handle 600 watts. That's just absurd to even think about. That's just a marketing thing, so ignore that. If I were to hazard a guess, and this is purely a guess, I would say probably these are more in lines of like 60 watt RMS, something along those lines. But this is the model number, PLPW6D. They're paper cone, and they have foam surrounds. They are 89 decibel sensitivity, and like I said before, they are dual voice coils that are 4 ohms each. So these actually, the picture is a little misleading. It doesn't have, 6 mounting locations. It actually only has 4, and it should mount up with these holes almost perfectly. We would just need to widen the mounting holes for these. So this is just the first part of the intro. I'm going to be cutting this video together. We're going to look at these in a little more detail. We're going to pop these out, and then we're going to swap them over, and I'm going to show you what the wiring looks like on the inside, how to make the wiring connections to each of the voice coils, and then put the whole thing back together again. So I have two of these cars, and I already did this exact swap on another 2004 HSE with the Logic 7 system, and I am so pleased with how it turned out. What I really like about these is these drivers were so inexpensive. I think I spent $16 each on these drivers off Amazon. So the thing is, a lot of people out there, myself included, you can kind of fall trap to paying a lot of money for exotic drivers that use exotic cabinet construction and a manufacturing process and everything. And yes, there are absolutely benefits to higher end drivers, but in this case, for such a small sealed subwoofer application that just needs to fill in the bottom end and meet the OEM requirements for the system, these units work perfectly fine for that. You would be hard pressed to tell the difference between a properly functioning OEM subwoofer and these units in their place. But guaranteed, 90% of the owners out there who have subwoofer drivers that are in this condition, you'll absolutely notice an improvement by going with anything that has proper surrounds and a new driver as well. By the way, when I did the other subwoofer, I pulled the original drivers out and I tried to measure the nominal impedance. You know, calculating that sort of the losses that you get when you're actually measuring it nominally. It's always going to measure less than it actually is. But in the case of my measurements for these, they measured like under 2 ohms on each voice coil, which was ridiculous. So anyways, so that's the primer. I'll cut the video together again and we'll take a look at these next. Alright, so I've gone ahead and taken one of these drivers out of the box just to give you a closer look at it. So, you know, some pretty basic construction here. There's nothing too special. It is a paper cone. It has a coating on there for durability and some strength. It definitely does feel strong. It can look a little deceiving. It looks like it might be made of some woven fabric. I'm almost positive it is paper. That's what it's manufactured as being. It just has a coating on there. And then you have a surround. These are foam surrounds. It's nothing special. They're going to degrade just like the originals over here with enough time and temperature cycles and use. But one thing that I was kind of happy to see is they have a stitching going from the cone onto the surround itself. So maybe that'll help hold it together, especially when you have some excursion and stuff going stuff like that going around. The basket is you know, very basic construction. It's plastic, and it comes with 4 mounting holes. The mounting holes are almost perfect for the factory. But what we'll need to do is we'll need to drill those out just a little more. I don't know if you can see, there's like a little bit of a recess in there. We're actually going to drill those out so that the outer diameter of that recess, that's going to become the new entire width of the hull. So we'll choose the drill bit, we'll drill those out, and then if you flip it over, we'll look on the other side. Oops. Flip it over here. Again, you have your plastic construction here. I believe the spider is even plastic as well. The magnet is a pretty decent size for a 6-inch driver. They got a little vented pole piece over here, and then you have your dual 4-ohm voice coils, one there and one there. One thing on Amazon, when you look up the PLPW6D, Amazon itself within the product selector, it'll say that it's only a single voice coil, but that's incorrect. This model number from Pyle is a double voice coil, 4 ohm. That model number right there, and it has the 4 mounting locations. So just a word of warning: if you were to believe what the Amazon product description says, you would be misled. And then the last thing is, you can clearly see here, it's got a little voice coil cover, a little cap. So they put their branding on there and everything. Overall, I think aesthetically, it's not a bad looking driver. You don't see the little voice coil, the little leads going to the voice coil like on the original. But like I said, the stitching on here is something that you typically see that on some larger units. Some higher end units have like a stitching there to really bolster the connection between the surround and the cone. Because like I said, when you have a lot of vibrations and excursions coming from this, which is a subwoofer driver, be it that it's only 6 inches, it can just rip whatever glue is used to glue the surround to the cone, but the stitching really helps with the longevity. So the only other thing that I can't speak of is, I don't know what the extent of the strength of the surround is from the outer lip of the surround where it's mounted onto the rim of the driver. But that might be something to keep in mind as well in terms of longevity. If I were to hazard a guess, I would think the surround goes clear up to the edge and is probably press fit in between that sort of plastic lip and the spider underneath it. But then if you look under here, you can see where the leads go into the voice coil underneath that cap. And you can see the two leads there. One is larger than the other, so you can keep track of the negative and positive. I know it doesn't look like it on the camera, it's very difficult to tell, but one certainly is just slightly narrower than the other one. It's the negative that's narrower than the positive. So there you have it. There's the driver. And next we're going to be drilling these out just a little bit more, and then we're going to be pulling these drivers out and using the original screws to fasten the new Pyle into this old weathered enclosure. So stay tuned for that. Alright, so I've done one of the holes. All I used is a 1/4 inch drill bit, and all you do is you just start very gently and you go right through the hole, and you can see the difference there. That's the drilled hole, and then that's what a factory hole looks like when it comes from the factory. You're not doing any damage to the chassis of this driver. Let me flip it around for you. You can see what the hole looks like from the back. It's very clean. You're just expanding those holes out a bit so that you can get a perfectly aligned hole pattern to get the factory bolts through these holes. So just hold the driver with both hands. I'm not going to do it because I'm holding the camera with one hand right now, but hold the driver, shield the surround, and then just go very nice and smooth right through each hole and expand those out. So I'm going to do the other 3, and then you'll see the result. Alright, so I finished drilling all of these holes out, so I'll show you what they look like. There they all are, nice and big, really clean. You can see both sides came out really nicely. There's no damage done to the rest of the driver, so nice and clean, and that's pretty much ready to be mounted as far as the driver is concerned. I also pulled off the 4 screws from the top driver here. Here's what they look like. It's just a machine screw. I don't know, it looks like it might be like a M5 or something like that. It's a Phillips. So I just used a screwdriver, took those off. So when you pop this off, there are these plastic rim rings which fit around the driver. Now, this came off of a car with 165,000 miles on it, and this is almost certainly the original subwoofer unit on the car. On the other car that I did, it had 120,000 miles. The entire driver came out, and these did not separate from them. So if you take off the screws, you may or may not get the rim separating from it. Either way, next would be to get the driver out of here. So let's see if we can get this out of here without too much difficulty, and doing it with one hand. You're going to see me do something horrible to a speaker driver. Pay no attention. Alright, and it is loose. Just going to pry underneath here and get underneath the basket. There we are. I think it's held on by some glue or something. Let's see here. Kind of difficult to do with one hand, but there we go. Alright, so pop that out nice and gently, and when we get it out, you can see what the original unit looks like. You can see the dual voice coils right there, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the striped is the negative. But I'll confirm that in a second. So you just disconnect this and drop the new one in there. I'm going to go inside and vacuum out the inside of the subwoofer, because I'm almost positive that the other half of the surrounds fell inside and are probably stuck in there. So now's a good time to get those out of there. But let me get these leads disconnected, confirm the polarity, and we'll be back. Alright, so we got the driver disconnected, and I'll show you the driver up close, the original driver, in a second, but I just wanted to peek inside here. So inside of the, let's get this light set up. Inside of the subwoofer, you can see, oh, there it is. Let's get it to focus. There's all of the surround just hanging out down there, so we're gonna pick all that up. We're gonna vacuum any garbage out from in there, and it's just there's no acoustic padding or anything. It's just a molded plastic enclosure. It's nothing super sophisticated, but it works. It absolutely does work. And I think Harman, I have a lot of respect for Harman. I'm guessing they probably just equalized out any cabinet resonances that might have existed with this. That's probably the explanation for all the complexity of their whole system, with, you know, multiple different types of amplifiers like the one you see there, including an additional Logic 7 amp that they use as well. But yeah, that's the basic construction of the unit. So we'll go ahead and we will vacuum it out and drop the new driver in. But I wanted to show you the original driver now that we have it out. So let's go ahead and place this ring off. You don't need to reuse the ring with the aftermarket replacements. But yeah, here's the original unit. You can see there are the two voice coil connections. This unit is substantially heavier than the aftermarket, so the magnet structure is just so much beefier than what we're putting in there. But still, you know, at least what we're putting in there has surrounds and doesn't have voice coils that have just lost their impedance over the years. But overall, you know, back in the day when this probably rolled off the production shelf, it was probably a very solid unit. Worked very well in this application. But you know, I had briefly sort of entertained the idea of cleaning up these glue points and then getting a generic surround kit, like, you know, butyl rubber or something, and replacing the surrounds. But, you know, let me tell you something, this is on here, and it's just dilapidated, and it would take a significant amount of effort to clean this up and to glue a surround. And by the time I calculated what the costs would be to get the surround kit and the glue and all the time as well, by the time you did all that, you could buy 2 or 3 extra of these inexpensive Pyle units. So I would much rather just replace these Pyle units every couple of years rather than try and re-glue this. And then even if you re-glue it, that might not fix any damage that's been done to the voice coil over the years. So voice coils get pretty hot when they're in use, and that heat can sort of degrade their function and their impedance values and everything else over the years as well. So I just didn't want to mess with it. That's why I'm going to go with the Pyles. But anyways, when I skip to the next part of this video, you will see the Pyle mounted in here, and then I'll have this one removed, and you can kind of see the bottom end of the cabinet as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that, and I will also, in the next splicer of this video, I'll have the correct wiring for whether the striped and the solid, which one is ground and which one is not. Don't be necessarily deceived by this little black piece of electrical tape. It looks like it's from the factory. That may not indicate a ground, but I'll be right back with the values for that. Alright, so we checked the polarity, and the stripe, the green with yellow stripe, is positive, and the solid green is the negative after all. So I'm just making these connections here. One quick tip that I use on these is these connections can be a little loose on the new driver. So what I typically do is I just sort of compress these down. That firms up the connection. Really, these, you could solder them if you're really paranoid about them coming apart, but as long as they're nice and tight, it should be good. So we're going to go ahead and make this connection now. We got positive there, so we're going to dump the stripe one. Actually, let's do the negative first, so we might get a little more room with that. Negative goes right there. Positive goes right there. And let's go ahead and give it a little bit of compression so it doesn't come off. There we go. So that's on there really nicely. I'm happy with that. There we go. And now we can go ahead and drop that driver in like so. So, and you can see with the with drilling out the holes, it really lets you get these factory screws in here without any issue. So let's go ahead and start these by hand. That one's getting threaded. Let's do this one. Let's see there. Right. Okay, that one's getting threaded. That one is threaded. And that one, oops, that's binding a little bit. I believe that's working correctly now. Let's double check. Nice, that's working well. Double check that, good, that's on there. That one's on there, and that one's on there. All right, let's drive them in. Whenever I'm driving screws around a speaker driver, just as a safety, I usually jam my finger in there like that. So if the screwdriver slips, it's going to hit my finger before it hits the surround of the driver. Ask me how I know that could be a problem. Alright, there we go with that. And the last one. Alright, that's in there very nicely. So that's the first one done. Now let's take the second one apart. By the way, I woke my assistant up from her nap, and she can hold the camera now. So you get to watch the rest of this in live action. Alright, let's get this other driver out of here. It's so sad seeing a Harman product in such a state of disarray, but it is quite old. Okay, so let's get that off. Oops. You can see on the original driver it's not even marked for polarity. It just has a thicker connector and then a thinner connector. And the thinner connector was the solid green, which we presume is ground, and the thicker connector, the wider connector, was the stripe. And you can see for this bottom unit, the stripe isn't yellow like on the upper unit. There, that one, the stripe is black on one side, and on the other side, the stripe is red. So let's get that off safely. All right, and then there's the other driver. So you get to watch me drill out the new driver as well, because I haven't done that yet. So let me just set this one aside, and let's go ahead and unbox this other unit and go from there. All right. Yeah, we don't need that. She is. Yep, and there she is. Alright, so you can see there are the original holes. You can see there's like a little lip in there, and that's just enough of an obstruction to not get perfect alignment on the holes. So bring your 1/4 inch drill bit and just very, very carefully drill these out. So I usually just grab the driver firmly, both sides, and just very, very slowly and carefully go all the way through like that. You'll create a little bit of debris. We'll vacuum all that off in a second. Let's get that off the cone. Let's do the other one. Good. That one looks good. The other two. And the last one. Alright, let me vacuum this up real quick. Get these screws out of the way so I don't accidentally suck them up in the vacuum cleaner. Alright, let's get this. Oops. My vacuum. Actually, I'm going to vacuum inside of this unit. There's some surround bits left in there, so let's just do that while Alright, we're ready to mount this unit as well. So again, you look at those holes now, and they are opened up quite nicely. And from the back, they look nice and clean, no real burrs or anything. I guess the trick with working with plastic is just go slow. If you go too fast, you'll heat it up and melt it, and then you're in bigger trouble. So while I'm doing this, a couple of thoughts about Harman. So if you're unfamiliar with Harman, they're a huge company. They own JBL, Infinity, Revel. They bought Martin Logan a couple years ago. Harman is absolutely state-of-the-art in their approach, and I trust them with how they build their products. So there's a lot of research that you can do on Dr. Floyd Toole, who was a Canadian researcher who came up with a way to measure speakers using I think 60 different measurements that they took of a loudspeaker inside of a acoustic chamber, and they took these measurements of these speakers from like I said, 60 different points all around the speaker, not just from on axis. They took it from multiple points off axis, and not just your typical like 30 and 60 45 degree off axis. They took everything, and then using that data, they came up with a new way to measure speakers, and they called it the total energy output from the speakers. So they were able to measure resonances that an entire cabinet would produce when the speaker is transmitting, and then they could perfect their designs based on what they were measuring from their entire speaker assembly. So I'm not saying that they did that for this 2004 subwoofer. Based on the kind of, basic construction of this, there's no bracing or anything in there. I'm guessing they didn't do that, but that just sort of shows what Harman is as a company. So if anyone from Harman is watching this and watching me put these little Pyle drivers in here, just rest assured, I would gladly use a Harman product if you sold one for $16, but you don't. Alright, so we got that other one connected, and let's go ahead and get these other 4 screws in here. By the way, getting this unit out of the car, we didn't record doing that. Maybe we'll make a video of how to put it back in, then you can sort of deduce how to take it out. But not that difficult. You just take a panel. There's a carpeted panel that sits in front of it, and there's a couple of other trim pieces that you've got to take out in the correct order so you don't break anything. But overall, for $16 a driver, not a bad repair. And the difference in bass output would be tremendous, because this is the only subwoofer in the vehicle, and boy does it make a difference. Are you gonna win competitions and blow out windows with this? No, nor should you. But this does a really good job of just filling in the low end. It's not boomy. It's tuned very well with the Logic 7 system. The Logic 7 system in these Range Rovers is just terrific. I've put in $1,000 car audio systems, custom jobs in other cars, and some of them aren't as good as sounding as a Logic 7. So there you have it. There's your completed Pyle driver replacement in a 2004 Range Rover. So I'll lift the unit up and show you all sides of what it looks like. It sits in the car like that. Amp faces the rear of the car, and these face towards the cargo area. There's one connector that connects these drivers to the rest of your system, and the entire unit is held on from 2 10mm bolts there, one 10mm nut there, and then one 10mm nut at the bottom. And then the part number for this subwoofer is XQA 5030. And then attached to it is this special amplifier unit. A lot of people are under the assumption that this is the subwoofer amplifier. I don't believe it is. It's XQK 500050. I think this is part of the entire Logic 7 system, and I believe it does the front, left, and right channels. It may also have something to do with the subwoofer amplification as well. But that's it, and I hope this helps you L322 owners keep your cars in good condition, and don't be afraid of these $16 Pyle drivers. They work very well. Thanks for watching.